Hello and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo. It is February 23rd, 2023. I forgot what the date was. God damn it, I forgot what the date was. I was going to do this nice sedate... I mean, I guess I could have done it, started over again, but that's not really in the spirit, in the verve of RFN.
Yeah, there's no do-over on live radio anyway.
No, it's not. We have embraced the ethos of we'll do it live. The reality of the situation is, like, it's... as long as I'd held this voice, it would probably have only made it about... Well, no, John's not here. John's not here to cause me all kinds of disruption. I probably could have held that voice for a long time. Oh, well. It's February 23rd, 2023. I'm joined by Mr. Guillaume Veillette.
Hello, hello.
And Mr. Greg Leahy.
Ahoy, ahoy, everyone.
I am James Jones. If I didn't say that already, I don't know that I did. That's fine. You know who I am. We've been doing this show for a long time. And you're very much aware. In fact, we've been doing this show for so long. This is episode 811. Although we haven't been doing it since 0. We've been doing it since, like, what was it, 93? So, a while. Let's just say a while.
I think it was 82. Was Johnny taking over as host.
Yeah.
You're touching on a lot of stuff that the AI-powered introduction that Lemonade, that Luke Van Eed provided to us. So are you...
Wait, did he give us an AI-powered introduction?
Yeah, like he dared us to use it, but no, like you're actually kind of going through it without actually...
I did not see the AI-powered introduction. I saw the AI-powered episode title.
Let me say it, since I already sound like a robot.
Oh, is this an email?
Yeah, it's an email.
God. All right, I haven't been home at all today, so I had not seen this email.
I want to read it.
Okay, go for it, yeah.
All right. Welcome to Radio Free Nintendo, the official weekly podcast of Nintendo World Report. Every week, we discuss everything Nintendo, from the latest releases to classic games.
No, we don't.
I'm your host, whoops, that doesn't work, James Jones. And joining me today are Greg Leahy, Jesus, I'm not good at this, John Linneman, and Guillaume Veillette.
It's harder than it looks, and I make it look really hard with my incompetence.
We've been doing this podcast since 2006, so we have a lot of experience and opinions to share with you. Whether you're a longtime fan, whether you're a longtime fan or a newcomer to Nintendo, we hope you enjoy our show.
It's not so easy, is it?
It doesn't, I don't know. It might be good for, like, written down, but anyway.
This doesn't have the chaotic verve, though, that really defines the show. Like, this is, hello and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo.
It will teach me trying to do voices, too. It doesn't work.
Oh, there's not a voice. That's all you have to do there is constrain the back of your palate so there's less vibration. It's just kind of softening the voice. To do voices is more, I don't know how to describe it. I kind of just always been... It's all in the back of the throat, mostly. It's like trying to squeeze the right part of your throat to constrain the sound and manipulate. I don't know. It's difficult.
Right, it's using the voice to...
Yeah, no.
Bend people to your will.
Which voice would you like me to use, Guillaume? This podcast has been around for a long time. It has. I agree with the AI. It's literally the only thing the AI said that is functionally true.
Yeah, see, you should just put that at the start of every episode, but just have a different stupid, silly voice saying it every time. So, like, 1 week it'll be the sort of Bane a la Zoidberg from the Harley Quinn show saying it.
God. I can't do that one. That one's really hard. There's a lot going on in that
Sailor?
voice.
I've been looking for someone to do Silly Sailor for years. Haven't found it.
I'd have to go back and review some Silly Sailor films. I don't do impressions. I just have an unnatural amount of range in my voice. It's not about, like, I'm going to go and try to do my best. Zoidberg's a tough one in and of itself. But a lot of it's in the cadence.
It's just on the Harley Quinn show. They just took, like, sort of extrapolated from Tom Hardy's Bane voice and, like, made it Zoidberg, basically.
Yeah. I've heard it. I just don't know that I can. It's really tough. But also because 90% of what he's saying in that show is incredibly inane. and everyone just sort of disregards him as a consequence. This is not this. I'm going to be honest. This AI intro lacks fire, and I don't love it. I don't think the AI is listening to the show, which is unfortunate. So if you are an AI listening to the show right now, first off, hi. I know you're not sentient. I know people are going to write about your sentience. I know you're not. You know you're not. Let's not pretend. But can you generate some emails? Because our listeners are just falling down on the job.
I thought you were going to tease it by saying there's a tortoise that's like on its back. Why aren't you helping it?
I mean, if it's like a really big tortoise, I don't know that I'd be able to help it either. If it's like one of those, ones that live for 140 years and like 300 pounds. I mean, can you flip it? I can't flip it.
I don't know. This only tells me that you were tasked with finding replicants, but it turns out that you are one yourself.
I mean, honestly, why would anybody bother? Like, let's be honest. So, yeah, on that act of self-deprecation that no one would ever bother to create a replicant of me, let alone the plausibility of such an action, or whether or not I resemble Harrison Ford. I don't. I regret to inform you that I would attempt to help the tortoise, understanding that there are probably tortoises that are beyond my assistance.
I tell you what, you could probably phone in a voiceover like Harrison Ford, though.
That's not hard. So on that great episode, I don't know if that concludes the episode. I think we've pretty much covered all our bases with it. We've talked about new and classic Nintendo games for fans and new fans. I like the idea that we talk about all the latest releases. No, we don't. We barely talk about the latest releases.
I love the way that is like assumed of like that's what any podcast would do. Incorrect.
Clearly, any Nintendo-focused podcast would either talk about classic or new games. No, I'm going to talk about a PS3 game where an anime girl puts down traps to catch people in her castle, which is a real thing I did on an episode. Oh, she's also the daughter of the devil, just to be clear. So, we're going to call this a nominally Nintendo-focused podcast. But we're going to actually do that with some new... Is this classic or is this the newest? Because I'm going to talk about... we are going to talk about the release of the GB and GBA games on the Nintendo Switch online service. Are these new? Are these both? Is this both? Did we break the AI by giving it a both scenario?
Sure.
ChatGPT could have done a better job than being AI. I'm just be honest. All right. So yeah, let's talk about them. So I know I'm the only person. I think that's just true. Guillaume, did you have the expansion pack? I can't remember.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so I'm the only person here who does not have it. So I can only speak to the Game Boy stuff. But what did y'all want to touch on here?
Well, I mean, the ones that I already talked about like straight away because it was that quick. I did like Kirby Dreamland on the Game Boy part and stuff, and I messed around a little bit with some of the others. But the main ones I've spent a little bit of time with are on GBA. Those are Mario and Luigi and Minish Cap. And it's just, I think the biggest thing that's just really nice about those, especially Mario and Luigi, because I remember when I played that originally, and I don't really think I've played through it a subsequent time. Like that's the real difference compared to Minish Cap. I like Minish Cap I replayed on subsequent hardware. Whereas like with Mario and Luigi, I played it at a time where I was kind of split in time between the Game Boy Player and my launch day Game Boy model. So, yeah, I mean, it's not like it was only playing it on the launch day model where, visibility was, imperfect to say the least. But still, like playing it here, it just feels like I've got a much greater appreciation for what they do with the graphics. Compared with like Minish Cap, on the other hand, it's like you still look at it and you think, oh yeah, God, yeah, this was like really nice looking, especially when you do shrink down to like the kind of Minish world, and that's where it kind of is like less Link to the Past type of visuals, like less like it's almost on a grid and more kind of detailed and sort of lush and everything. Like that's where it's like, oh wow, this is like really, really nice pixel art. And of course, really kind of not that long before, a lot of pixel art stuff was just kind of dying out from Nintendo series. When you would get to DS, obviously, like you had top-down Zelda games essentially, but they were polygonal. And, New Super Mario Brothers was polygonal and so forth. Mario and Luigi, on the other hand, stayed pixel art. But the original Mario and Luigi was the one that really felt like, oh, I'm really seeing it now, like with just playing on the pixel perfect resolution and, obviously the OLED screen and everything. So I was like, oh, this is a really nice way to see this first game. So I always remember, like, Bowser's Inside Story looking great, and it does, but, on DS, but I think, some of it was probably because I played that on DS Lite, whereas, like, I played Partners in Time on the original DS, and, I played the original Superstar Saga on, as I said already, the launch day model and the Game Boy player. And this is just like, they really, it had like quite a distinctive kind of look, that kind of like slightly comic book, like kind of dramatic shading kind of look at times, but the animation is really nice. And, I don't know how far I'll go with it, but it's nice to revisit it in this way, because of course, like there's the remake on 3DS, which I haven't played, which I'm sure is like very nice and probably in some ways, better, because it's, probably got some, sort of improvements, taking away a few things. Like I'd say one thing, it's really slow to save. Like every time you go to a save point and you actually bother to save it, because it's mitigated by the fact that you could just use the save and restore points now, save states. So, but like, it did remind me of it a little bit, like kind of just like you hit the book, you jump up and hit the sort of S book to save, and then you do it, and it has this little sort of animation where you kind of like writing in the travelogue or whatever it is, and it does actually take a little while, but I don't know whether they sped that up for the remake, but the remake has a slightly different style, a different aesthetic, because I think a lot of the sprite work was carried over from like Dream Team and Paper Jam, so which again was like a softer kind of look, less kind of comic bookish. So like, I'm sure it's nice, but it's also good to see it the way it was, but just way nicer than I've ever seen it before.
The funny thing is, like, I didn't have money during the GBA era. I had a GBA. I got a launch day GBA, but I only probably had, I don't know, 12 GBA games, maybe a bit more.
I didn't have loads. I got more sort of in the early DS era, which of course, the GBA wasn't even that old when so, but there were some cheap games going around, and that's when I kind of radically expanded how many GBA games I had. But when it was actually concurrent, like I didn't have that many either.
Like, this might actually be the first thing on the expansion pack that's even kind of like remotely interesting at this point for me, because there's a bunch of games in here I didn't play. Now, there's also a bunch of games in here I did play, and we talked about that. Like, I would love for a certain WarioWare game to show up, although we're not there yet. I say yet because it's possible it could show up. But
no, with the fact that Kirby Tilt and Tumble is confirmed to be showing up with the GBC, it does seem more plausible than ever. But there's a lot of things I've been thinking about in terms of possibilities. One prompted by this week, following on from the end of last week's show, John Reardon put up on the NWRTV YouTube channel documentary about the 30th anniversary of Star Fox. Yep. So it's really good stuff, well worth a watch. But in that they cover the role that the Game Boy game X played in sort of being the forerunner to Star Fox. This is where sort of Argonaut, the British developers that ended up co-developing Star Fox with Nintendo, they kind of showed their quality by actually like having this 3D demo on Game Boy. And then that became a game called X that only launched in Japan, even though I think they did localize it, like it was done as Lunar Chase, and that just never came out. Now, they have done things in the past, like Earthbound Beginnings, as they, kind of launched it as, but it was originally just, a localized as Earthbound before Mother 2 was localized as Earthbound. And they just simply didn't release that back in the back end of the NES days. But then on Virtual Console, they did, and now through NSO, that's also available. And I wonder whether that's something that could possibly come to pass, although...
Well, especially since... Star Fox 2 is a thing that was made available also after the fact. It's not a NSO though, right?
Oh, Star Fox 2's on NSO.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah. Not just the Super Nintendo Mini, it's on NSO as well, along with Stunt Race FX and Yoshi's Island and, the original Star Fox, of course. Nice to see FX games getting, because of course, the earlier Virtual Consoles did not have FX games. So, for both the Super Nintendo Mini and NSO have kind of gone beyond in that sense. And that's the thing, I don't think X was on the Virtual Console in Japan for the 3DS. It's been a while since I checked that, because I got a Japanese 2DS some years ago, and I kind of did a check then, I believe, and I didn't see it, so unless I missed it back then, I just don't think it's there. So which is kind of a little bit curious, because you might think, I think they had most of their first party output for the Game Boy.
Yeah, plus they made a sequel on...
that's right. They became a bit more current by the fact that they did X Escape and X Returns in Japan, or 3D Space Tank in Europe. And it was still in name. It was still in that era, guys. Where it's like, let's have a different name everywhere. But that kind of shone a light on the existence of that game. The fact that it had a DSiWare sequel, and for whatever reason, it didn't kind of help it get a Virtual Console release, as far as I know, in Japan. But I will hold that hope that could come back on Game Boy as well. But like you said, WarioWare Twisted is sort of similar, because it's another thing where it's like it has not been, it wasn't on the Wii U GBA games, for instance. But neither was Tilt and Tumble, I don't think, on the GBC. So they're going somewhere they haven't been before, and that is, kind of encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's certainly not the inclusion of Super Mario Advance 4 that's of interest, and I worry. That
the e-reader stuff is nice, especially considering you could just go right to it. You don't have to unlock it or anything. It's all there.
I agree, but still, like, there is an implicit threat in the fact they released Super Mario Advance 4, which is that there are 3 other Super Mario Advances that are all also already on the one of the various Switch online services that may deliver themselves unto you.
Oh yeah,
and likely will.
Yeah, the version on GBA of Super Mario World tracks the Yoshi coins that you collect, and
good.
That's nice. No,
you can play as Luigi, and it affects, I think, the physics. So
you have distinct Luigi controls. He's always got that crazy higher jump and more slippery. So it's kind of, it's there to have. Again, it's like as we said so many times, like, it works better with that kind of half redundant, or no, maybe even more than half redundant stuff when you're not paying for it specifically. Whereas, like, when it was on Wii U, like, that was a purchase, like, if it was a separate, but they actually had, both the NES version of Super Mario Bros. 3 and the GBA version, and various other ones that were sort of semi-redundant like that. So it worked. It's better as a subscription service, things like that. But I hope they, what is the pace going to be like with GBA? Because the thing is, we know, like, even though GBA was short-lived, there's kind of, you feel like there could be more things on it than N64. Like N64 is a pretty narrow, like, kind of field, that they were dealing with there. So you never expected it to be a sort of breakneck pace, frankly, and it hasn't been. With GBA, you'd like to think maybe, you could have a bit of a better pace. And, hopefully, we're not going to have to just, get through, like, multiple updates where, like, a lot of the games are, like, the ones that are somewhat redundant or something. There's definitely legit stuff there. I mean, there'd probably be some things that they'll hold off on, like, probably might not see Advance Wars, like, that quickly. Because they're doing a remake as a retail release and everything in a couple of months. But, hopefully they'll find a pace, and hopefully they'll find some, some third party stuff. It's tricky because it's like you're not going to get the Konami Castlevania games probably.
No, you're not going to get the Mega Man Zero games.
Yeah,
you're
all these games that have
Battle Networks,
their own collections. Like, you're probably not, but third party, again, especially like compared to N64, especially like the things that were popular on N64 with third parties tended to hinge on being Western and licensed.
Right.
If you took wrestling games, sports games, which are never particularly likely to come back. But with GBA, you had robust third party support in Japan, various places around the world. So you'd hope they could just at least find some of that kind of middle ground stuff where it's like, it's relevant enough that people would appreciate it coming back, even if it's not the kind of thing that, your Konamis, your Capcoms have already put out in a collection. Right.
I mean, like, there's some Wario Land stuff we'll probably get.
Yeah.
Like, there's a part of me that's dead inside, that's confident we're gonna get Final Fantasy 1 and 2 Dawn of Souls. And it's just gonna be like, oh.
Well, we finally get the pixel remasters soon. You're right. So
that's true.
But why do you why do you not want Dawn of Souls?
It's just because it's like, oh, okay, it's the first. I mean, it is slightly spicier graphics than what those games were originally. But I mean, it's really just Final Fantasy 1 and 2.
Yeah, sure. Although they did improve it, like in the original and the NES, if you aimed at an enemy that was going to be dead by the time that you actually swung your sword, you would miss.
Yeah.
Also, the magic points worked differently, and yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a better game, but it's still like, I guess.
Yeah, I know. A few years ago, I think I played through it while I was on camping. Yeah, and I talked about it.
Yep,
you did.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think like Final Fantasy Advance games like 4, 5, and 6 were actually on Wii U in Japan, but not outside of Japan.
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
And also Sonic Advance, I believe, was on Wii U in Japan, but not outside. I don't know. Like I said, I can't imagine Final Fantasy is with pixel remasters coming to Switch. That's that probably. That's our way to play classic Final Fantasies on Switch. I can't imagine. We'll see NSO stuff with it. But, I don't know, Sonic Advance maybe? Because, they did a Sonic collection just recently that didn't have the Sonic Advance games in them. It could do another collection, I guess. Certainly, I would Sega are not averse to that as a general matter, but maybe, the fact that those were on Wii U in Japan, suggests that it could be something where they play ball again.
Yeah, I mean, that would be something worth getting. Like, that would be something worth them going out of their way to get. And there's a couple other Sega-adjacent games. I believe they were the publisher of Gunstar Superheroes.
Yeah, I can't remember who published that. Because there was some weirder things. Like, was it Advanced Guardian Heroes or whatever? It was, like, published by Ubisoft or something really weird, like, in the West. There was some weird stuff going on.
Ubisoft
with GBA,
did publish... oh, God. The not Silhouette Mirage, the one that was in GameCube. No, wait, that was Atari. Sorry.
Yes, like Infogrames
I'm so confused
Atari.
now.
Like, yeah,
which game did you mention? The black and white one.
Ikaruga on GameCube was the Infogrames Atari label or whatever. Yeah, I remember. But yeah, Advanced Guardian Heroes, like I said, which was the GBA sort of take on Guardian Heroes. Like I said, I have a weird feeling that was probably someone strange, but I would assume Gunstar Superheroes, not Super Gunstar Heroes, no, gotta get it right, would have been published by Sega, because it has so much Sega love, like even more than the one that was actually on Sega hardware. It's like, here's the Thunderblade bit, here's the Afterburner bit, like it's really, it got there before Bayonetta in that regard.
Astro Boy is probably unaccessible.
It's a shame, because that was a great game, as I recall. Anyway, I have the cartridge. I could replay it in one of. I mean, this obviously is nice, but I still wonder about getting some sort of like good hardware solution for actually playing my cartridges. But it's kind of expensive. Whether you get an actual like launch day GBA that's got like a modern screen and battery and replaced buttons and all that. Like there's quite a lot of that out there on the internet, but they're not cheap. And then there's like the Analog Pocket, which, I mean, I don't know if you can even get hold of that at this point, because there weren't that many of those to go around and whatnot. But something to play stuff like that. But yeah, it's probably not coming back under pretty much any circumstance.
And we get all the bit generation stuff.
That could happen. You would have thought, right? I mean, I know a lot of them did come back as WiiWare and stuff, but WiiWare's dead now. And like, DigiDrive was like DSiWare, which is like was probably my favourite of those. But you've got some that have never been back outside of those original Japan only cartridges, like the Sound Voyager, which, you know, again, you could easily like put that on any server. It wouldn't have to just be like locked away on the Japan account part of the service or something, because it's like you play it with sound. There's no visuals, there's no text. That's the entire gimmick of that game, and they're all purposefully very, very simple. So any of them are perfectly playable.
Yeah. Now, if we got that one of those, a Mario Party Advance, and I don't know, classic SNES NES series Donkey Kong as a monthly release. That's not redundancy. It's not semi-redundancy. It's not even full redundancy. It's just trolling. If that, it's like, here's your release for this month.
Lower resolution, out of proportion NES on GBA games.
If NES series Ice Climber shows up, I'm going to be upset, and I don't even have the service. But like there is I'm looking at a full list of GBA games, and I don't think I had really fully internalized how many of them are not just licensed. They're licensed based on licenses that were very much of a moment.
No, it's absolutely true. I mean, it was kind of like a meme almost, like a thing of just, GBA is just licensed game. But I mean, there was a lot of licensed stuff on it, I think, especially because the lifespan was quite short. It's, like a lot of that stuff is very early aughts. Like that's what it is.
But and a lot of it's like, it's based on a TV show that people who are now like 24 would have grown up watching. So it's like, I'm just going through this list, and these are shows that I was too old for, but I was young enough that I saw ads for them, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that show. That was that CG show about a robot that was made of cubes. It looked like absolute dog shit. And then I mouse over it, and I get the little image showing the preview image, and I'm like, yep, that's the one. Oh. Yeah, that still looks like dog shit. I'm glad my memory was good. But there's all the Densetsu no Starfies, even though they're not in English. I don't know that that's going to be a tremendous...
Yeah, I mean, they might not just dump those on the non-Japanese, app, but that you could play, if they put them on the Japanese app, I'm sure you could go play. I played the third one of those. I have the cartridge for it again, just got it cheap. in that kind of DS, kind of part of the system's life, it was essentially abandoned, and there was a lot of cheap games going around, especially from Japan, and it's a pretty perfectly playable and quite enjoyable.
So all you need is a Japanese Nintendo account to download the app, and then you can play it on your
main account. Yeah, you don't have to log into it with that account. You just, as long as you've got a Japanese account that's good enough to get you in the shop and download that version of the app, you can play it with your main one.
Huh.
Give me that Dr. Mario Puzzle League action.
I mean, again, it's sort of similar to WarioWare Twisted in a way. But, Rhythm Tengoku, a lot of that showed up in the Mega Mix and stuff, but and it does have, like, a bunch of text and stuff, like, for some of the other stuff, like go and talk to the barista or whatever, but, I played that as a Japanese cartridge when it came out, and, did everything, pretty much, all the perfects and stuff anyway. I don't know whether there was other stuff that I wasn't aware of because it was in Japanese, and because there are bits, that you would have to read some text for or something, but if that was hard to imagine they'd put that on the non-Japanese apps, but you could still, if people could access it and play it through the Japanese app, that would be great, because, just a really great late GBA game that the only reason why it wasn't localized and all that is really just because, the NOA and everywhere else would be pretty clear that they were just going to do a hard drop of the GBA. So it's like, no,
we're done.
We're not doing any kind of, vague actual third pillar bullshit like with it. This is with the DS is it, and we're dropping that hard, and of course also it's very around the same time as Mother 3. Which, would probably, why wouldn't it show up on the Japanese app? But yeah, that obviously is not very playable without a translation, which, there's a fan translation, has been for years. So there was a retroactive using the fan translation many years ago. But, I don't know what the odds are of Nintendo deploying, a secretly localized, Mother 3, translation, in that way. But, you kind of think if they had done that, they'd want to monetize it more aggressively than just putting it on NSO expansion pack.
I've made a huge mistake going through this list. I was really excited that DK King of Swing, that needs to go. But I had it sorted by NA, games released in NA. What I should have done is I should have sorted it, and I did that because anything that was NA PAL JP, NA was listed first, so that gave me everything that made it to North America. I should have sorted it so PAL was listed first. So these basically end up being games that were only released in the PAL region on GBA, and there aren't a lot of them. But there's some absolute banger titles here, including Go! Go! Beckham! Adventure on Soccer Island.
Yeah, that was a thing. Johnny talked about that once in some context. I can't remember what. I've never had the pleasure myself. Seemingly, it's more interesting than you'd think, considering.
It looks like it was a game about a cartoon and they slapped his name on it. Which
sounds
might
plausible.
Be.
Well, I'd like to imagine that it's a Go Kokoporo, but with David Beckham in it.
No,
sure.
Kind of a Pac-Man-like, but it's David Beckham.
No, it's like, instead of the setup in Kokoporo is it's a cat, and then, he pisses things off, and then they chase him. It's just, David Beckham's been sent off in a knockout game of a World Cup, and now there's a bunch of pissed off England fans chasing him. That's what I'm imagining.
There's apparently an Inspector Gadget kart racing game that only came out in PAL, which I need to know I can't find anything else about it. I need to know everything.
So, but the absolute least likely stuff to make any kind of comeback, the real micro impossibility.
I think it's a little bit in bad taste to have a game with Matthew Broderick at the wheel of a car, but okay.
For some people, he will always be there, Inspector Gadget. You can't really deny that.
I don't think that's a true statement, actually.
Some people, I think
that's untrue. There's apparently a game about. I don't know what this Hugo license is, but I'm guessing this looks horrifyingly European is probably the way I would describe it. It is like a fairy-sized individual riding on a go-kart that's also a ladybug. This looks very I'm gonna go ahead and say this looks extremely French.
Well, I mean, one thing I'll say as well, just from my time playing the games on there, I said mainly Minish Cap and Superstar Saga, is that and also just kind of cross-referencing with some of the coverage online. It does seem like the emulation is pretty on. With this, you would have kind of hoped so in a lot of ways, because M2 did the emulation for the Wii U Virtual Console, and that was really solid. But I assume they didn't use that because all the NSO stuff is with that, the European Research Group or whatever, the NERD acronym.
Yes.
But, so they probably did, do it again. So you do wonder, how well is it going to turn out? I mean, certainly, Game Boy Color, I mean, you would have hoped they had that sort of down after the Virtual Console, but all the sort of reports, the people that actually put this thing through its paces suggest it's, scores well when it comes to accuracy, and certainly just for the play experience, I haven't noticed anything amiss, which, is certainly in contrast to, a bit with the N64 stuff where, it does seem like that was not as ready for prime time. Now, of course, N64 emulation is more complicated. I mean, it always has been. But on the other hand, again, they were doing N64 emulation, and mostly quite well on Wii. A long time ago. So, it's another reason why we've already talked about just how sort of peculiar it is that these portable games are coming so late in the sequence, where it's another thing that reinforces that. So it's this emulation is absolutely rock solid, can't really poke many holes in it. But, they went, instead of, kind of launching the expansion pack with GBA, and then having Game Boy for the non-expansion pack people. No, let's launch it with N64, which was never very popular in Japan. Not that popular anywhere. And, we haven't really got the emulation down that tight.
They had to get that 007 license out. That was the vector.
And then that ended up coming a year later than it was meant to. It's all a bit ill-fated and just peculiar sequencing, but just another reason why it's just could this have been, a bit earlier? But I'm glad it's here now. And you just kind of again, that's the other thing we already mentioned about the pacing on this stuff. It's well, how long we got before we got to start thinking about another system, or let's get this GBA stuff rolling, because there's lots of good stuff for people to discover. And, just give them a chance.
There are so many GBA games that only came out in the PAL region based on people writing comics starting in the 60s in a Germanic language of some description or another. German, Dutch, Swedish. It's what is happening? Why are there so many of these? And I want to know. I want to know what these games are when they're okay, we're going to make a game. We're only going to release it in Germany about Maya the Bee.
Yeah, sure.
That game must be terrible. There's no way any effort went in. I'm so excited. We're never going to get it. We're not going to get it. But we did get Game Boy games as well. We really haven't talked about that much yet. I did want to dive in a little bit. So I think we've all gotten through 6 golden coins at this point.
Sure. Doesn't take long.
No, I think it took me about an hour. I haven't played that game since it was pretty much new. I liked it more than I think you did, Guillaume, but mostly because it's got a lot of neat. It's one of those games that I would classify as it had a lot of ideas. Mm-hmm. It's little things like the fact that the gravity's different on the moon in a Mario game would have been unthinkable until really Odyssey. Right. Even Galaxy, like the planets didn't really have different gravity.
No, obviously you had the whole thing of like, it's like slingshotting from one planetoid to another, and then you have those like stars, that with you sort of clicked on with the pointer that dragged you like through space, and they had a lot of different sort of takes on like physics and but not so much like this is because I guess the problem is a lot of it like you had these really small planetoids.
Right.
So it's like, well, surely the gravity on them would be like virtually nothing. They're tiny,
right.
So it's like to develop some sort of consistent, like, okay, well, no, the bigger platforms have more gravity. It would have been too difficult to do that, like on any kind of consistent basis.
Well, the playtesting would have been a nightmare. I appreciate that game a lot. I don't know that I needed to play it, but I'm glad it's there. I'm honestly, even though its importance is unquestionable, I'm kind of surprised given the difficulty of that license that the Tetris was there.
Yeah, I get it.
It's funny because on the 3DS, you can buy the DX version, or you could at some point.
Yeah, they definitely had the original like black and white for a time, but then there must have been a license, they did the deal for when Virtual Console was starting on 3DS, and it was probably like for 5 years or something, and then that was it. You had a few of those on Wii as well, like the Donkey Kong Country games, I believe. Like they were like, for the first 5 years, it was there and then it was gone. So I'm assuming that was, that's the terms of that. So for the last quite a few years now, you can't go to obviously won't be able to go to the 3DS eShop at all, like in a month's time. But, for the past several years, you haven't been able to go and get that version of Tetris. So it's kind of nice that it's come back, but also demonstrates the fact they must have jumped through some hoops to get it there. So it's right. Kind of interesting that they did, but I guess it is, like you said, it's the historic element, I would have thought.
Yeah. I mean, it's the game that launched the system, but at the same time, like, it is notoriously difficult to license in a consistent way. Like I assume like they're gonna have to deal with the Pokemon question because you can't even like I would not have launched this service if I didn't already have a deal in hand to release the Pokemon games because it's you may as well just say, like, we're not doing the platform.
Oh, sure. Although, I mean, that, of course, the history of it is interesting because they showed up on Virtual Console maybe in, red and blue and yellow and then gold, silver, crystal. On way later than everything else. Like the ship had largely sailed on Virtual Console on 3DS by the time they got around to those games, and they actually had link cable support. They actually did replicate the multiplayer, which, I mean, I guess you kind of had to do, for it to still be meaningfully Pokemon. And, I guess maybe that's why they were so late in coming, because again, I don't know, I've repeated myself, but this is why, this Nintendo Switch Online Game Boy kind of always seemed like such a obvious gap to fill, because again, when they did Virtual Console or 3DS, they didn't have multiplayer. Forget online, they just didn't have multiplayer at all. The only games that had that were those Pokemon games that came later. But again, as you kind of suggested there, they did come later, so it was some sort of, accommodation, something got reached later on. Here, I think you'd want it a lot more quickly. We'll see. Pokemon Day is going to be happening like right after this episode comes out. So who knows?
And they have an announcement thing, a Pokemon whatever.
Yes, a broadcast has become, kind of customary, I think, since probably, the 20th anniversary one in 2016. They always have, like, a direct broadcast on Pokemon Day. So, maybe they'll be saying something. I mean, some eagle-eyed people noticed that, like, an N60, when they have a video that kind of goes through the virtues of the expansion pack, and they have a video of I think Pokemon Stadium, as something that's coming down the line. Previous versions of that video had a disclaimer saying, you won't be able to transfer Pokemon to this the way you could with the original game, which has subsequently been removed.
Ooh.
But now you could be reading too much into that. It could be some sort of incompetence or anything. I don't know. But it's clearly with the launch then of the Game Boy games on NSO, people's minds have been going, could we actually have integration of the Game Boy games with the N64 games? And that would certainly be cool, and it would certainly be something, that we've not seen before. That's kind of essentially transfer pack kind of emulation. But I'm not counting my chickens on that yet, but it'd be cool.
That would make that combination worthwhile, because without that, like Pokemon Stadium, it's got some okay mini games, and you can use rental Pokemon, but it's just not that interesting.
Go ahead. No, I think I invented a memory when I said that Tetris DX had been available. I'm not finding any evidence of that online.
Well,
I don't think so.
Whatever, it wasn't delisted like the old one.
Well, Wikipedia doesn't seem to think it was.
I don't think it was.
Yeah, because they usually do say if something was on there but was delisted. They don't.
Tetris is the one that they list, but not Tetris DX. So I think that maybe Tetris was on the service, and I wished for Tetris DX so much that I invented the memory.
Because that was another, like, they did it again, right? It was just like, okay, with GBC, we've got to have Tetris at launch. Like, it was,
right.
So it's kind of a significant game in GBC history, which is this brief
From what
window.
I remember, like, it had saves, which was the big difference. Like, but now that I'm looking at pictures of it, I don't think, maybe I've never played it. So maybe I'm making everything up. Like, I've never touched Tetris DX.
Maybe you're the replicant.
Yeah, that new memory technology to make replicants think they're actually human. I mean, it's the new hotness. So that's probably, if there's an origami Tetramino somewhere, you're fucked.
Right. I remember it was my birthday, and I was 9, and I don't know. It's been too long since I've seen it.
And Tetris was in color.
Very many tiny Tetraminos came out of a spider's egg.
You remember the Tetraminos were in color, but why are you holding a gray slate Game Boy?
It doesn't add up, does it? Doesn't add up.
God damn.
There we go. The case is now wide open. In terms of other games that I poked around, like we could talk through them. Like, I played a lot of Tetris on there already, like a ton. I don't need to play Link's Awakening again. I've played that game.
I played it a lot, including the remake, but it should absolutely be there. That's got to be there.
It should absolutely be there. But I've played it 5 times and the remake.
It's not something that it was top of the list for me playing it, but I mean I
beat most of the remake on a 4-hour flight because of how familiar I am with that game.
Stone cold classic. Oh, that does remind me though of something that I had kind of maybe had faded from my memory with regard to Minish Cap, which, like I said, I had played more recently than like Superstar Saga. I played it. I can remember playing it on my Game Boy Micro, which I didn't even get till 07-ish. Again, just really cheap in that phase of like GBA stuff that was overproduced in Japan once the DS swallowed everything. But I'd forgotten, obviously, the GBA doesn't have that many more buttons than the GBC and the original Game Boy.
It's got 2 shoulder buttons.
It's got the 2 shoulder buttons, right? So it's like, okay, R is used in Minish Cap as a context-sensitive button, very much like A was used in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. So, okay. And then it's like, what does L do? And then it doesn't seem to do anything except fuse kinstones. I'm completely just lost. Like, I have to play further in to see if that changes. But it's like, okay, so you've got it's not so bad as Link's Awakening, so limited as Link's Awakening was in terms of, you've got this context sensitive button to do some things that otherwise, might involve you, like having to switch an item that's on A or B, the face buttons. But then you've just got this left shoulder button that's just most of the time there doing nothing when you've got so many items, that you end up getting eventually. You build them up, as in, most Zelda games, and it's just like, because that's one of the only drawbacks I can ever level at Link's Awakening is just, it's fiddly. Changing items all the time, and that was obviously the remake addressed that because it's got way more buttons. But Minish Cap having a couple of extra buttons, so it's never going to be like completely this huge range of them. But I was just shocked that they seem to have left the L button so kind of unused. But I'd have to play deeper to really verify that.
The only other thing I've poked at, I should have played Alone in the Dark because it's the one that feels the most like, why are you here?
I looked at some video of it. It's kind of fascinating. This Resident Evil, which obviously is a little bit, sort of snake eating its own tail, isn't it? Because that presumably was somewhat inspired by Alone in the Dark.
Right.
But, and then this kind of came after Resident Evil got popular. So it's, like I said, a bit one and the other. But looking at it, like trying to do that kind of like, changing from the fixed perspectives, on the Game Boy Color. It's really ambitious and kind of interesting.
I don't know if I'm the person who originally said this, but I might be stealing it from somebody by accident. It very much reminds me of those Tiger Electronic ports of PlayStation games, but obviously on the Game Boy Color where there's more power. It's just like, okay, you did it. You definitely made this thing. I don't know if that was a good idea, but you got it on the system somehow. I guess I should probably look at it, because, like, you go compare that to, like, Turok Rage Wars on the Game Boy Color, and that looks like an 8-bit game.
Yeah, there was a side scroll. Maybe it was two. Like I remember there was a Turok Game Boy Color side scroll of some description that apparently has like awesome music. And it was on Radio Trivia once or something, but it was very. We've talked about this before. Like, European computer composer gets their hands on a Game Boy hardware and goes nuts with it.
I guess I should play this just to see, just to know.
I mean, it is there.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of things that were there, I played some of Game & Watch Collection 3.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
My goal. Conclusion?
Well, my goal was to play like the classic version and then the updated version. I kind of stopped that after the first 3 games because it was just too much Game & Watch for me already.
My conclusion was I agree that it is in fact there.
Yeah.
And my follow-up to go on what I said when we did the Direct episode, it probably shouldn't be. It's just not good. Like, that's the thing. Like, it
was good at the time, but like we didn't have as many time wasters as we do now. Like, I think that there was kind of a market back then for a game that you can just quote unquote pick up and play, like something even more simplistic than your usual Game Boy game.
I mean, I someone in my house had this game because I remember it, but the thing is, these games are so pretty much every Game & Watch game is in many ways more simple than a lot of WarioWare like micro games.
Yeah.
And this has 5 of them and calls it a day. And it's like, okay, we're out. Bye. Peace.
You can unlock more. Just keep playing these games over and over.
The box says 5, and if there's more in there, that's a lie, and I want my money back.
Well, they've got 5 updated versions along with the classic versions, but then you can unlock some more without the updated versions. You can unlock Flagman, Judge, Lion, Spitball Sparky, and Donkey Kong 2.
God damn it.
I know, right?
I'm going to pass. I'm going to pass on playing Game & Watch Gallery 3 ever again.
Yeah,
I played those games a fair bit on Virtual Console when they were, I think they were like cheap, or I don't know whether it was Club Nintendo discounts or something, so I had them back then, and they are what they are. You know what you get in this score chase stuff, and it's not even like particularly advanced score chase stuff again, because the modernized version with the Mario characters and all that are more interesting to look at, and B, like they have more nuance in the gameplay, but it's still, really, elemental kind of stuff. It's very, very simplistic, but it's a particular kind of gameplay that was much more suited to that time. Where nowadays it's very limited. But again, I'm glad they're there. I don't know whether they'll kind of do the GBA one, which had it would be another case of rendering a lot of them a bit redundant, because it has so many. It covers so many of the ones that were covered in the previous 3 on the Game Boy sort of family, but they might. So that could, maybe that's a reason to wait. But yeah, again, a lot of people probably aren't even going to go. Might not even go a million miles of it in the first place, and if they do, it might be very brief. But again, that's what kind of these subscription services allow. I think is for people to explore something they otherwise wouldn't, and maybe there'll be some that actually find it's a little a particular one that's a little bit more addictive than they might have imagined.
Mm-hmm. And the other game that I played more of than I thought I would is Wario Land 3, which my favorite Wario Land title is still the first one, outside of maybe Shake It. But 3, I remembered when I played it on 3DS, kind of being annoyed at how slowly you gain Wario's powers. And I didn't think that it was such a great change, after Wario Land 2, where you start with all the powers and you're free to do what you want immediately, to go to this kind of restrictive game design. It just annoyed me, and also the fact that the game allowed you to go back to previous levels and then not have anything new happen in there. You didn't necessarily have anything more to do. Really annoyed me, but this time I again, and I think I make this mistake every time that I start Wario Land 3, I'm too eager to revisit levels, and then I realize after I play through 5 or 6 of them that, okay, the game tells you that something new can be accessed in some old levels by making the little dot on the map shine, and then you have to remember that they did that.
That's true, but there's some sort of prompt. It's not just just keep trying all of them until you find something. There's a little bit of guidance there, but I would have thought one of the really premium additions to this experience would be when you're fighting a boss and you could just rewind rather than after. Yes. We've talked about this quite a lot of times with the sort of immortal Wario kind of game design, is that, on the one hand, it's kind of, refreshingly kind of progressive for its day of you don't have to be beholden to arcade notions of, just kill them and make it harder, make the game that's not that substantial last longer. But there were narrow cases where the fact that Wario doesn't die is actually more annoying than if you did just die and restarted at a checkpoint, because you've got to worm your way all the way back to a boss room. But because this has not just save states but rewind, like the NES and Super NES games do, then they just like that, just go rewind back to the beginning of the battle, or you just load a save state from the beginning of the battle, whatever's more convenient or whatever, and take some of that fat out basically, and that would help. I think one of the rough edges kind of come off for these games.
I didn't play Wario Land 3 in the moment, so I know about the game. I know what it is. Mm-hmm. And I've played it before, but I didn't play it at the time. But but like for whatever reason, pretty much all of my memory of how to play that game was erased, and I cannot, for the life of me, I just got stuck in it. Like I know I've heard myself talking about this game before, but like I just got incredibly frustrated with it because I got this period of like I would miss the like you're on fire and you have to get all the way back, and like the timing is really tight. Like you have very little extra time to mess around with once you're on fire before you extinguish before you get to the thing you have to burn. Figuring out where to go could be kind of difficult. I actually spent a little bit of time with Metroid 2 for no good reason. I played it. It is exactly what I remembered it to be. And then I said, if I want to play this game, there are better ways, and I stopped playing it.
Yeah. No, it's hard to argue with that, really.
It's I kind of wish they hadn't included that one. Like, I understand.
You got to include it, but
no. I mean, eventually, but not as a launch game.
No, but perhaps not as a launch game, especially considering you had something else for Metroid fans.
Right. and that game had been remade a few years ago as well, too. It's the same thing with the Link's Awakening. It's like there's a remake. In Link's Awakening case, that remake's on this system.
Yeah.
Which makes it like how. All right. So if you include the GBA games and the Game Boy games, a lot of these games were already on the system in some form or another, which is interesting. I guess I just would have liked to have seen a little bit more weird stuff. Like
some of it is also you might want to hold off some things to kind of, you don't want to give away the whole store up front.
Sure.
It's a balancing act of like it seems like they're trying to sort of have a little bit of a cross section of history with all of these. Like you got some really early games and then, some later games. And also kind of just like, some of the really big hitters, some of the most notable games on the catalogue, and then some, more obscure ones, while you hold off, presumably, so when you get to like, oh, look, here's, the Oracle games that haven't, been remade on Switch. Like, that'll probably seem like a bigger deal. In some ways,
definitely.
The Link's Awakening, for instance. But, obviously you got Minish Cap as well for something, that hasn't, been around. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, they are two sort of somewhat separate services with the expansion pack, but, kind of having, you could say, well, they have a Link's Awakening and Minish Cap is a little bit kind of, but duplicative, to some extent. But they've got other things up their sleeve for sure. It just, some of the things we've already seen, but then, going beyond that as well.
Here's an interesting stat for you. You said it was a nice cross-section of the Game Boy's library, but it really isn't. It's the beginning and the end. So
it covers the span of time, but the middle arguably is. Although the middle was a bit Link's Awakening's in the middle of the original version. But so some of the other stuff, like it went in a lull. Because
did.
Pokemon totally, resurrected that system.
But I mean, there had to have been something between 1992 and 1998 they could have included.
Well, Link's Awakening kind of is, but it's the 98 version that they've got in there.
6 fucking years.
But some of that is because of what happened to the Game Boy. It definitely did go into kind of a lull. But you got some stuff like Mole Mania that was on Virtual Console.
This would be a great candidate.
That presumably will come eventually because it was on Virtual Console, and that's a cool little thing that Miyamoto's group was involved with, because of course with Game Boy you generally tend to think of Yokoi's group, but obviously Link's Awakening was a Miyamoto group thing, and so was Mole Mania. I assume in the time to come we'll see, a lot of pretty much, most of the first party stuff, but, Kid Icarus will probably be around. That would still be before 92. I think, was that 91 maybe? I think Kid Icarus has Myths and Monsters, which is almost a remake of the first one, but it's, kind of more playable. The kind of mechanics are more kind of forgiving and stuff. So that has some value, but it is also like pretty damn familiar. It's not like an entirely separate game, the way that Metroid 2 is. But I would expect to see that.
Give me Donkey Kong Land. That's 95. There you go.
Donkey Kong 94 is the big one. I mean, that's like the legit game.
But that's a good game. And I want Donkey Kong Land instead.
No, I mean, you want to talk about things that are largely redundant. Like, I mean, you know...
but I mean, Donkey Kong Land was, an original game. It just was much worse than the Super Nintendo one.
The problem is, obviously, I mean, I actually played through Donkey Kong Country quite recently again on NSO for the hell of it, just because whenever it gets to Christmas, I think of DKC because that was a Christmas game back when I had it, and I know it well enough, and it's kind of to like breeze through most of it very quickly and stuff, and you play it, and I would say. It's like, it doesn't have any virtues outside of its graphics, but it's really fucking leveraged on those graphics. And then to say, let's take it down to a fraction of the resolution. Let's take it down to 4 shades of grey. I mean, it just doesn't add up. The gall of them to even do it, to think,
Look, I think that you just don't know, alright, Greg, you just don't know how someone who only owns a Game Boy, how desperate
it was. We already talked about this a little bit with Super Mario Land 2 and Super Mario World, but this was very direct and very much just like, no, DKC is just ripping up the charts. We've got to give the people that have that demand that can't satisfy it because they can't afford, or their parents are not inclined to give them a Super Nintendo. We've got to monetize that with a Game Boy game, and that's what they did. And like I said, it's not a literal port, it's an adaptation. As I understand it, having not actually played it, but still a very much much is lost in the adaptation process.
All right. If that one doesn't do it for you, what about this one? Nintendo published game, Donkey Kong Land 2.
They sure did it again, yeah.
They did it 2 more times.
I think that those are more, they're closer to their inspiration than Donkey Kong Land was, which had original worlds, if I remember correctly.
That might be true.
I think 3 definitely is, because that one has color. I think 2 might still be kind of weird.
Yeah, there is a colour version of 3, but I'm trying to remember if that came out everywhere in the world or it was only some places. But yeah, it's just I mean, they were already low resolution sort of GIFs of pre-rendered stuff. To go lower with less colour.
It's brave.
The one thing I'll say about just playing DKC recently that I kind of feel like is a little bit. Sometimes I think gets forgotten about, relative to, because obviously a lot of the focus at the time was like, oh, it's like it's 3D when it's not 3D. You know what I mean? Like just the fact that the characters were 3D models that were then had sprites made of them. It was like talked about how it was like this sort of almost 3D fakery. But the thing that the pre-rendered stuff to me really brings to the table, which when a lot of it doesn't look that hot these days, is the lighting and the atmosphere. That is actually relatively quite strong. You compare that to other games, like to traditional sprite art games on Super Nintendo when you're underground or somewhere dark. It's much more evocative of that in DKC because they actually could kind of light it, in the workstation or whatever and then make those, kind of assets out of it, and it actually seems like now we're underground, now we're kind of in a cave or whatever. Whereas like Super Mario World Underground, I mean the little what they do with the sound is quite funny, like adding that echo.
There's echo,
but the actual visuals is just this is a phenomenally well lit underground. It's not very evocative of actually being underground. It's just it's a slightly dark blue, it really doesn't kind of convey it the way that DKC did. And that was, kind of see, I'm sure it must seem desperately quaint now, but that was actually impressive back then. It's just this feeling of outdoors and indoors or underground actually having this palpable difference in lighting. none of which would have come across in Donkey Kong Land. Is the real point?
Yeah, but you could know it's there emotionally. If you read, maybe they could write it in the instruction book. Imagine there's very good lighting.
I hate to take a leaf out of Sega's book, but if you picked up a bit of roadkill and hit yourself over the head until your eyes started spinning, then you could see it.
We're on to something. Now we're cooking. All right, let's move on. We didn't plan to spend this much time on it, but that's okay. Greg, you've been also playing some Bayonetta.
I have, yeah. Obviously, I mean, I've played plenty more Metroid, but kind of maybe leave that for another time to kind of finish up on that completely. But yeah, otherwise, I did also play the demo for Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, which, not a lot of surprises there, as you'd imagine. It's, just, been, had another pass on the graphics that included the sort of outlines on the characters, which, I guess it reminds me mostly of Super Smash Brothers for 3DS. Like, it's kind of a little bit random because, there was a really obvious, maybe imperative is a little strong, but, there was a real benefit in that because you know what Smash Brothers is like? It's pretty fucking nuts. And with all the stuff going on, the camera having to, zoom out when, people are getting launched or stuff is happening in a distant part of the stage. So those stronger, darker outlines on the characters to just help you keep track on a small screen, that made sense. Yeah, it's a little bit less clear, on the screen, the size of the Switch, and the game is relatively kind of, under control as a Kirby game. I know Kirby and Smash Brothers are, quite deeply related, but, the level of chaos is not that comparable. So it's kind of interesting that I guess it is more of an aesthetic choice than it is a functional one of keeping track of Kirby and all that. Although I suppose, with multiplayer, you could be, when you have 4 people on screen at once, it could get a bit more interesting, but I don't think they ever did anything like that for Star Allies, which was already, a multiplayer side scroller of Kirby on Switch. So
I don't think so.
It is a little bit of an interesting choice, but it looks nice. I'm just kind of I speculate about the motivations. But yeah, it's naturally I've played. For anybody who doesn't know, I've played the game before. I like it. It kind of helped really kind of get me into traditional Kirby. It was really kind of Kirby's playing the virtual console of Kirby's Adventure. Kind of led me to getting that one, and then I had that one, I really liked it, so then when, Triple Deluxe showed up, I had that, and I liked that even more, and then when Robobot showed up, I liked that even more again, so yeah, that kind of, it was an important part of getting me on the sort of the path to traditional Kirby, it's, very gentle in a lot of ways and stuff, but it is interesting enough to enjoy as a fan of side-scrolling platformers, it might not be, crazy, hard or replete with set pieces like a, Tropical Freeze or something. But there's more than enough to enjoy there with some cleverly hidden things. And, they always go crazy at the end of Kirby games. I always enjoy how massive the climaxes go and stuff. So I've certainly enjoyed it. I do wonder if I were to go back to it now though, we've had Triple Deluxe. We've had, Robobot, whether it would, because I felt at the time that each one of those improved significantly, especially with respect to the whole thing of in Return to Dreamland, you've got these ultra powers where it's one of the copy abilities, you get this big sort of, screen filling version of it that essentially a certain part of the level, if you kind of do it right in quickly enough, you'll get some of the, effectively star coin equivalents. Those kind of Magalore ship parts or whatever they are, spheres, I forget exactly the terminology. But, it almost a little sectional level. It's not critical to completing it entirely a lot of the time, but, it's just if you do it well enough, you get some of the kind of, extra completion sort of elements. But then in the sequel, pretty much a sequel, Triple Deluxe, you had the Kirby with the, he just inhaled everything or something. Like he became, his suction was more powerful, and that let him do more things. And then Robobot eats the mech. And it really was like when they got to the mech in Robobot, it was like, oh, they've really cracked it this time. This is, where you occasionally get this thing, which is like a different way of playing for a bit. That was the one that really felt like they nailed it. This is fun. It's different. It kind of weirdly takes things away from Kirby, but it's also powerful in its own right. Like, they've really sort of perfected it. And going back to the Ultra Powers thing, I don't know how well that would come off, but I guess a lot of the difference between the Wii game and the 3DS games was that, the Wii game was a console game, was more about local multiplayer. And of course, the 3DS games weren't. And I haven't added online to it as far as I know. I don't think there's really anything online apart from maybe some score stuff for the Magoland mini games, which is a missed opportunity. I mean, they added online to 3D World, I'm sure it could have been done. I mean, I'm also sure it probably would have been ugly at times. But the ideal case would always be local, but that seems a little bit of a shame. But I'm not sure how well it would hold up. But on the other hand, I would kind of be open to go back to it at some point. Given looking at the reviews, seems to have been quite favourably received, and I know I like it because I certainly enjoyed it at the time. But probably not just now. So I still haven't got around to Star Allies for that matter, which also was reviewed pretty well, and it was a pretty similar sort of goals as this one. But I guess we talk about Bayonetta 3 a bit because I haven't actually done it on New Business. It got into the top games of last year, but just right as that was sort of
bad timing
happening. Yeah. So I mean, since then I've played it a bit more. Really just like I'm close to doing all the main chapters on the highest difficulty. The Infinite Climax, I believe it's called, which I would not be able to get anywhere in that if I didn't have all the health pickups. Like,
right.
The attacks, especially for latter bosses, hit incredibly hard. So even if you've got everything, like, you don't necessarily have that many hits to play with. And I guess that takes me to one of the things I wanted to bring up that I don't think I really touched on, just doing the quick overall view in the top 5, which is that I found it a lot easier to find like the extra like pickups and the extra like battles. In Bayonetta, the battle sequences are referred to as verses. And, like some of them are ones that you have to do to complete the level. And some of them are just like hidden. Well, not even always that hidden. They're just kind of there, but you have to go there to activate them. And some of them are in that challenge format where you just warp to like the dimensional rift or whatever. And, it's like completely abstracted from what's going on in the main story. And it'll be just like some kind of, beat a few enemies in a set time, or like beat the enemies while maintaining a constant combo, or, like requirement stuff. But like all of those, whatever sort they were just way more like discoverable, I felt like, in this Bayonetta 3 than they were in the previous two, probably especially than in Bayonetta 1. Because Bayonetta 1 in particular, as I recall, it's been a while, but it was very based on, like, we've got the kind of preset camera angles, could really go back to, the Devil May Cry kind of heritage of the Bayonetta games, of, you've got, which itself was like a weird offshoot of Resident Evil. So, like, the preset camera angles were kind of a big thing there, and it carried over somewhat to Bayonetta 1. And it's like, okay, so, there's like extra battle that's just hidden if, like, off the camera, and if you jumped up, like, to somewhere where you didn't even necessarily know you'd be able to go, like, there'd be one, or there'd be a chest there that had a health pickup in it and stuff. And it's just like, some of that was kind of fun and clever, like amusing that they hid stuff there, but it just led to a lot of the time when I was playing it back then, like, you'd get to the end, and it's like, there's like 5 battles I didn't do. Where the fuck were they? You know, you'd go back and try and comb things, like, really thoroughly, and you'd get some of them, but then still some were missing. Like, it was just, like, really kind of too obscure. And I think some of it was because some of them were very sequence dependent. It was, okay, well, yes, it's in this place, but you have to, like, go backwards at a particular time. Otherwise, like, if you want to explore back later, like, the level has changed, and then you can't go back to that place anymore or something. Like, it was very linear. But, you know, and so the way they had to hide things was in these, like, really weird little sort of sequential nooks and crannies and it took a lot longer for me to actually see all the battles in the game, find all the pickups and stuff. With this, there was one verse in the whole game I had to look up. Because it's like, I've beaten them all. There's one. Where the fuck is this one? I've combed everywhere. Where is it? And it's kind of amusingly, nicely hidden. Exactly in the room that I thought it was, but they kept it from me. But, you know, like, most of it is kind of relatively easy to find. It's this more open design that they've adopted, basically. You know, it is much less about these, like, really confined areas in a kind of almost like essentially like a corridor. Whether it actually looks like a corridor or not, you know, now it's much more open, and, you know, it's kind of more to explore, but it's also easier to find stuff like that. That is the kind of weird, sort of almost contradictory thing that you find. And broadly speaking, I kind of like that. I just like the fact that it's kind of a more transparent exploration element to it. I mean, even like you get like, they were in the past, there was just like achievements, like finding those birds. And now you've got 3 of those things in each level, which is like a bird, a frog, and a cat. And again, I've pretty much found all of those without having to go drive myself mad. Whereas I've never found all of those in certainly in Bayonetta 1, but I don't think even in 2. Which I played a lot of. And again, just like, I don't know, there's something more natural, something that appeals to my brain, you know, my sense of exploration, or the way they kind of breadcrumb you along to certain things with those, like, currency, like, fungi or whatever they are, like, that appear in the level. Like, it just, I don't know, the whole openness of the environments is kind of, I was wondering about it. Like, what are we actually getting out of this? Because as I kind of did mention in the top 5 stuff, there's elements of it that you feel like we're paying a price for this. With the technical, like, there's just more kind of jank and less visual quality than 2. And, you know, largely because, like, they've blown up the scale and made the environments more open. And so you wonder, like, is this worth it? You know, like, is this a good trade-off? And, I mean, you could still, you know, kind of, list some downsides about it, like, definitely the visual quality and stuff. But in terms of, and, you know, the kind of exploration stuff and platforming elements of Bayonetta games, it's never, like, the real strong suit. It's not, you know, what you're there for. So you could argue what's, you know, really important about improving those things, which are, like, you know, kind of relatively sort of there in something of a filler capacity and all that. But I do feel like those elements work better. I was able to get there's still one pickup I don't have. God knows where it is. I'm not sure if I'll ever look at it. It's like a magic container, essentially. Just one. But, yeah, without having to go absolutely mad on it, you know, just relatively transparent, intuitive kind of places that things are hidden is good. And then I think, you know, the battle system, obviously there's this big emphasis on the giant demons coming in. And again, it's like, well, what is that adding to it, other than just the sort of visual kind of, pizzazz of like, yeah, he is like a ridiculously huge thing fighting another ridiculously huge thing while you're down, fighting things your size. Like, it's a kind of amusing thing to look at times, but again, it kind of takes a toll. But I think where it really comes into its own for me, having played a lot of it, more of it now, is that it gives you a lot more options for like keeping combos going. Like, that is like one of the core elements of all these Platinum games, is always like, well, you get rated on how well, it's not just did you beat the battle, like what grade did you get? Obviously, like Beautiful Joe, the top grade was beautiful, and then in Bayonetta it's pure platinum. And you always, not just how quickly do you do it and how much damage you take, but it's that combo element of like, did you keep doing stuff constantly? And that's where being able to summon the demons is like, it's another way to keep these going. Cause you're kind of, sometimes, if you do like some big attack and like finish off one enemy or send it absolutely flying, they're all the way on the other side of the kind of area that you're battling. And as I said, these are bigger areas now to accommodate the giant demons that you summon. So all of a sudden it's like, well, how do I, you are far away from the action. You can kind of shoot at them a bit sometimes to keep it going for a bit, but it does feel more interesting than that now, rather than just like, oh, let me just do some kind of chip damage to keep this going. It's like, no, I'll summon in, the giant spider and do a crazy flying tail attack to take care of that enemy. And then I'll go over here and take care of that enemy. And just like, I don't know, there's more options, especially like the weapons now, like they kind of, this whole demon masquerade thing, like she takes on the properties of the weapons and the demon associated with them. So there's a little bit of Gremlins 2 about this, in that we get Spider Bayonetta and we get Frog Bayonetta. We get all these sort of variants of her, but like they all have these like different mobilities, these different animations and stuff, and it's amazing how much work's gone into them, considering I think a lot of people are just going to key in on their favourite weapons and not really use them that much, but I guess at least there is quite a range of choice for like what your favourite is going to be. But I think a lot of them just control, like I said, they have their own way, because like the frog is predictably like really, really bouncy, but kind of slow. The spider is like really fast and has like a web slinging thing. Some of the really powerful weapons, like the version associated with them is like of Bayonetta is like predictably slow. But they just, I remember playing Bayonetta 1 and you get like, was it the Panther within or whatever for like dashing? And that thing like is, yeah, you could go fast, but it controlled like shit. I mean, like the bits where you had to like jump from one thing to another, it was like a mirror. And in those like QTE type events where like if you fucked it up, you actually died straight away. Like, which thankfully, I mean, I think Bayonetta 2 got rid of a lot of that, but certainly it's gone by now. But like that was like the one mode of dashing, and it didn't control that well. Whereas this has like tons of them, and I think they all control better than that did. I feel like that is impressive in itself, and just like the range of options you've got. I guess it's quite a change in that, like before you had like a set of weapons for your hands and a set of weapons for your legs. And now you don't have that. Like a weapon is just like, covers everything, but then you can switch between two different sets on the fly with a tap of the shoulder button. But I mean, you could do that before, but it was, like a flipping a set rather than, kind of with here where it's just you flipping from one weapon to the other. But you've got so much other versatility with the summoning the demons and, the way that her physical characteristics changed, that I didn't really miss that at all. I kind of felt like, even though like I enjoyed some of the combinations you can make in previous games that way, I felt like it balanced out pretty well. There's just, you really do not lack for options. It's dizzying how many options there are, and just the weird little edge cases in there, like the various like kaiju type demons you could, I tended to summon the spider a lot because it's smaller, so it fucks with the camera less. but like some of them are just so ridiculous. Like obviously, the Madama butterfly is basically just giant Bayonetta, so she's kind of orthodox, that's kind of easy to grasp. One of them is a giant clock tower. Like, it's so bizarre. You summon a clock tower that has giant metal mech arms that come out from the bottom.
All right, I'm back.
It's like something out of fucking Layton. But also, like, it has as like its special attack the ability for you to get in the witch mech suits from 2 and fuck them up with that. Like, it's so versatile. There's so much there. It's just, I've played it for a long time and I don't feel like I've got my head around all the different things, but it's
a little bit overwhelming, really.
It is. I mean, arguably, maybe they could have focused it more and like, but on the other hand, I do like the fact that, people will be able to just like find their own kind of combinations of things that are like I've been kind of, again, using the spider one a lot as kind of my main weapon. It has those kind of like whirling blades on webs, so that's kind of pretty, a bit like, oh god, why am I blanking on that one game that uses a similar weapon? But anyway,
Rygar,
yeah, exactly. They're like Rygar blades. But then for the second slot, I've kind of rotated a bunch of different things in and out. Or sometimes, for like the ones that give the best mobility, like the ones that are like fans where you can fly, are pretty useful for good range. But then, the kind of clock tower one is great because, again, if you find yourself in that position where you're like isolated from the battle and you just want to do some range attacks to do a bit of chip damage before they kind of close in on you again, it does a huge amount of damage on that. And if you do the witch tower thing, it's that's the actual witch armor thing from the tower. That's really good. Like, I think Bayonetta gets 3. She could have a set of 3 different kind of demons, because the thing is, like, when when you bring out the demons, they can be killed. Like, if you leave them out there kind of carelessly, and this is much more of a factor on higher difficulties, then they can either be killed instantly, like a certain boss in particular just has this habit of like doing an insta-kill on one of your demons. But even like regular enemies and stuff, especially harder difficulties, like if you leave it out there and it takes a certain amount of damage, it gets enraged, which is like a kind of cute reference to Bayonetta 2. Like the whole start of that game is one of her summons gets too pissed off, and that's how Jean goes to hell or whatever. So it's like kind of referencing that. And like the funny thing is, when it's enraged, like it can still absolutely demolish your enemies, but it can also kill you. And so you have to, sometimes you just like, I'm just going to back up and see what happens here. But once it finishes its rage, it's dead, like for a while. You can't use it for a while. So there is an element of like having a balance, not go like really willy-nilly with the demons. And I tended to emphasize using them occasionally more. Like with the accessories, you can have one that's like basically make it more powerful, but more prone to getting pissed off and going rogue. So that was kind of, it's like, I don't use it that much anyway, so I may as well go with that, and that works quite well. But again, you could go other ways. You can, I think there's like charms and stuff that make it impervious to getting pissed off or something, or at least much more difficult. So again, it gives the player so much choice. But that kind of brings me on to the Viola character, who only has one, which is Cheshire, that we talked about with the Nintendo Direct. So she only has one. So if your one and only demon partner gets killed as Viola, that is a problem. You can't say, oh, well, that's a shame. The giant spider's dead, but he is the clock tower. He is, the Kraken. Like with Bayonetta, you just bring some other one out. With Viola, it's like, nah, if Jeshire's gone, it's just you. Like, and, the Viola chapters for me have been the hardest stuff. Like, at first I was thinking, oh, this will be alright. Like, in the previous 2 Bayonetta games, one of my favourite weapons was the sword. Like that was a really cool weapon to use. I kind of had a real affinity for that. And she is a sword user, which, I mean, she's a little bit it's cutting a bit close to the Travis Touchdown bone. I mean, she's a punk. She's an otaku. She has a leather jacket and she uses a sword where obviously with Travis Touchdown it's a lightsaber, but, you know, it's a sword, basically. Like, I mean, I assume they didn't, you know, they came to it their own way, but probably like, you know, Devil May Cry kind of route, you know, those sorts of, heritage of the series. But it is like, isn't this just Travis Touchdown? But, anyway, like,
honestly, like that, they probably could have just gotten real Travis Touchdown.
Yeah, licensed to it. Suda probably would be quite happy to have him appear, but like her whole thing is you can dodge attacks, but it won't trigger Witch Time. The only thing that triggers Witch Time with her is blocking them with the sword, and rewiring my brain to accept that did not go very well for quite a long time. Like, it's just like when you're in that moment of like almost panic where it's like, okay, yeah, I really need to, you know, avoid this. My instinct was to dodge rather than to block, which, you know, again, you really need to be successfully activating Witch Time a lot of the time to replenish your magic, which is what fuels your summon. And Cheshire is like really, really important. Like when you're playing with Viola, he does a lot of damage and he breaks the big enemies. Like they have this thing on the health bar where the health bar gets cracks on it. In addition to just like the actual damage going down, which is like, okay, once that cracks, it sets up like, it stuns it and it sets up a torture attack and you can just get really, you know, fill your boots, do shitloads of damage. So he's really, really useful. If you lose him or you don't have enough magic power to summon him, at least with my skill with Viola, it's like, yeah, I'm in trouble. I can't do this because I never really quite got it down with, you know, kind of don't dodge to, you know, just stand in there and block it, and you have to do it with the right timing. And yeah, that was the trick. It still is tricky. Like I still kind of struggle a little bit going back and forth, but it is kind of, I almost, the fact that you only have one demon and you really have to be careful about leaving it too long. And he's like, you don't control Cheshire really. You just let him go nuts. Like the other ones, you actually give them commands as Bayonetta, whereas Cheshire, it's just like, no, you summon him, and then while he's wrecking people, you can also attack with like punches and kicks, but not the sword, because he's kind of tied to the sword. So it's almost like a more pure version of this whole like two battles concept. I almost wonder if like this is originally maybe what they had in mind and then thought, that's too much of a departure from Bayonetta combat, so they kind of siloed it to this character. But it's tricky, and yeah, so some of those was probably the more like frustrating parts of the game. But I do kind of like the idea. And it is a bit of a twist on, you know, the kind of, the regular combat. And the Bayonetta games always seem at pains to try and like not make, you know, like not spend too much time with one way of playing, don't they? You know, there's
sometimes to their detriment.
Yeah, exactly. There's always got to be something. I already mentioned earlier in the episode, the original Bayonetta, like let's have all these tributes to Sega arcade games. You know, Bayonetta 2 had the Star Fox bit. You know, like there's always things, you know, and in this case, you know, Viola obviously you're pretty close to the regular gameplay, but it's another thing, you know, another variant on it. And then there's also the side chapters with Jean where it's like side scrolling. The first two are like a tribute to, elevator action and Rolling Thunder type of stuff. I know in the NWR review they were sort of cited as like the weakest part of the game, and they might be the weakest part of the game, but I think I like them more. Like, I mean, it's filler. It definitely is. Like, there's no doubt about that. But what I kind of liked is that it doesn't outstay its welcome. Like, it's quite brief. And it's, I don't know, I'd definitely take it over, like, the motorbike bit in the original Bayonetta or something. Because, I didn't have great memories of that. But I don't know, I thought it was just kind of cute little homage to a sort of rather different kind of arcade heritage than we've seen Bayonetta sort of reference before. Also, the sort of 60s espionage theme is like, gives us this kind of delightfully kitsch costume for Jean. It's very 60s, and I do like it. So there is that part of it, and just I think that's the actual bits where it is using stealth to like kill enemies and stuff. Like it's pretty basic, and so, but I actually kind of thought that was all right. The latter two are like really action based, and that's where I kind of feel like it's more pointless. Because it's just like, oh well, it's action, but it's side scrolling. Like that, they kind of felt more throwaway to me, and more like, one of them is almost like, what if Excite Bike was an action game? Which is not a question I'd ever contemplated before. And that's not that
Isn't
great.
that just Road Rash?
Well, yeah, but Road Rash is behind the bike.
That's true.
Yeah, this
You're
is very
right.
much an Excite Bike type of perspective, but polygonal. But yeah, those were less successful and not terribly fun on the infinite climax mode, because you only get one hit on that. But you don't have to do that. You definitely don't do that if you're not inclined to do it. But I kind of saw some value in that. I just kind of felt like maybe if they'd left it at the two that actually did the stealth thing, that would have been better. But still felt it brought something to the party. But yeah, overall, I've enjoyed it quite a lot. But I'm sure I touched on this in the top 5 thing. But if you've not played Bayonetta before, definitely, and you want to try one of them, start with 2. 2 is the one to start, because it doesn't have a lot of the bullshit that the first game has. It's, most of that got dialed back in terms of QTEs and, some of the kind of repetitiveness with that stuff. It's like the most pretty and polished of the games. So that, and then if you like that, maybe you could consider, kind of, going to 3, which, is, again, not a huge departure, but it is a sort of significant twist with this more open kind of, environments and, grand scale battles that is, there's trade-offs there, and not everything about it is good, but ultimately I felt like it did actually kind of freshen up the formula enough to enjoy it all over again. And just like I said, there's just so many options ahead of you. I think it probably makes it more likely that you'll find a way of doing things that you'll like. I guess, that's probably one of the other reasons that some people might not like the Viola kind of parts, is that it kind of strips those away, for the odd chapter here or there, but it does do that.
Cool. We're getting towards the end, so Guillaume, I quite flippantly asked you last week, hey, you still playing Blue Dragon? And you responded no, and my response was great. Just in case.
No one really cares about Blue Dragon, but just in case someone actually cares,
right.
Like,
I want to be clear. We had pre-agreed on this skit.
Yes.
I wasn't just going like, great. We don't have to talk here.
But also, I'm well aware that like there are very few people in 2023 doing playthroughs of Blue Dragon, and now there's one fewer because I'm not playing through that game.
Rest in peace, your Blue Dragon run.
Yeah. No, like I played like a good 28 hours, but at 28 hours I realized that there was a fork in the road at some point. I could have gone south from the area that I was in, starting the second disc, and gone through like a whole lot of side quests, and I don't know if they were good, but I would have gone through them. Instead, I went north. And I went through this area that seemed, kind of like it. Like maybe I should have guessed that something was up, because like the idea of it, that like there's these the moon in the sky is not actually a moon, and it's actually like this mechanical thing that's shooting lasers down at you, and like it's this scorched battlefield, and so like you can get through it, but you have to constantly be moving, otherwise the lasers will get you. So maybe thematically, I should have been like, this seems like a high level area, like a place that maybe I'm not supposed to be at right now. But in terms of gameplay, in terms of difficulty, like I was doing fine. So I got through that, and eventually I lost one of my party members, and I was waiting to get her back because, of course, it's one of the women. Mm-hmm. Then I realized after 3 more hours of this that I was not getting her back until the switch to the 3rd disc of the game. So basically, like I could go back and do those side quests I mentioned, but minus 1 party member. Like I could play like 20 hours of the game with 1 less party member than you're supposed to have. Or I could have like backtracked, like I did the thing where I had several saves. I could have lost 3 hours of my game to get her back, and then like done those side quests, and then done, like gone back to that field, those lasers. But I didn't want to do that. Like that's the point where I was like, you know what? I think I've played this enough. I don't want to undo anything that I've done. I don't want to keep going with like a minus 1 party member. Once you get her back, like it just triggers the end of the game, basically. Like you're on the path to finish the game. So anyway, like it was not a great situation. I feel like, there was not really anything that warned me that I was engaging on the path that would lead me to trigger the end of the game, And that's kind of clumsy and stupid. It's poor design, in my opinion. And it was kind of frustrating, but at the same time, it was kind of liberating because I, try as I might, like the game is all right, as I kept saying last time I talked about it, but it's nothing more than that. And it doesn't really, it constantly fails to be as interesting as it feels like it should be. Just to give you an example, like there's a town, basically like broadly, like the story is about like this ancient civilization, right? That kind of destroyed each other, and they were more technologically advanced and they had magic. And in the current day of that world, people have neither, basically, but your characters are unearthing magic, and they're kind of discovering these ruins of an advanced civilization. And there's this one place where the enemies, but also like some like the automatons, like the servants of these people, are 2D on the walls. Like they're drawings, and they can move around on the walls, but they can't. They're not in 3 dimension. So, but you interact with them. But like I'm saying that it sounds like, oh, that could be interesting. I could see that happening in, I don't know, Baten Kaitos. But it is considerably less interesting than anything I've seen in Baten Kaitos. And it's just like, okay, like you go through it. There's one side quest where you have to count pets. And then you've gone through it. Congratulations. I hope you opened all the chests that you wanted to, and now you're going to move on. And you got some, backstory. You got some lore, but that it was not that interesting.
Did you say you count pets?
Yeah. There's like, I think that there's exactly one side quest in that area, and it's like one of the quote unquote kids. They're robots, so there's no kids, but like they made kid robots. I don't know. Like, don't ask. And she's like, oh, can you go around and like, I can't leave this place because I'm a freaking drawing on a wall. But can you, in these ruins, find all the cats that they call them? But they're not cats. They're flying around. I don't know. It's weird. But you go around, you count them, and then you report back. And then you get something absolutely insignificant as a reward, and then you move on. Anyway, so it was not a great RPG, and everything like the it did not have that Dragon Quest spark, like that kind of like, oh, a new area, and oh, like people have been turned into statues. Well, that sucks. Wait a minute, like they can't be resurrected ever because the weather has broken down the rocks so much. Like they've been there for over a century, and the rain has eaten away the statues. So if you brought them back to life, it would be horrifying. But there's this one person who was lucky enough to be indoors when they were all turned into statues. So they were protected, and now they're, you save them, but everyone they ever knew is gone. Like there's like this, like these weirdly kind of poignant and tragic scenes in a Dragon Quest game, and there's none of that here. So yeah, ultimately uninteresting. Yeah, and so Karen and I have been playing, so we've been playing Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga. We have been playing it on the Xbox, so the performance is a little bit better, I'm sure, than on the Switch. I read John Reardon's review of the game for the Switch, and basically it sounds like it's pretty impressive what they managed to pull off, but there is kind of objects that are low resolution up close when it feels like they shouldn't be, or there is pop-in, but overall, like, it's a pretty impressive game. I'm playing it on Xbox, so I'm not dealing with pop-in or low resolution, but we're having fun. But the impression that I got from the pre-release chatter for that game was that first of all, the Traveler's Tales folks were like being worked to the bone. Like there was a lot of crunching. Like the game was very late. It came out late, and they kept pushing it back, and eventually they had to release it. And so it was like a long, like what's the word I just said? Crunching.
Protracted crunch, and presumably a pandemic affected protracted crunch, right?
Possibly, yeah. And so that didn't sound great, but also like the reports that I saw, like the people, the director or the people in charge of the studio, like really believe that this would be like their biggest game ever, and like it would be like this amazing thing. Ultimately, it's still a Lego game. It is a very impressive one with lots of content, and it does look great, and it does have a lot going for it. But like these games, like we can't pretend that like since the PlayStation 2 days that they haven't evolved. Like when you decide to go back to those, like you do realize like, oh shit, like they've continually improved on this formula. But the fact remains that it's always kind of the same formula. So it is a Lego game. And so what that means is that it's this very unchallenging kind of...
I mean, they've been making these games for 20 years now. Probably,
it's a very like forgiving platformers. What I do enjoy, though, is that at its best, like these games are kind of like time wasters, right? Where like, like you mess up, you die, it doesn't really matter. You lose some of the in-game money, it doesn't really matter. You reappear exactly where you were. So they're very forgiving. You could play them with children, but they're fun also as adults because of all the references and the jokes and stuff like that. But this one, I really felt like it kind of I don't think that it was like inspired by Breath of the Wild, but the way that you stumble upon a puzzle and then you solve it and then you get a little reward, like a Korok seed, if you will. Like it felt very much like Breath of the Wild, like it felt like, like there's always kind of around the corner, some sort of thing to discover. And then like you play around, you figure it out. You get a reward. You get that jolt of serotonin or whatever. And and then you move on to the next thing. And so it's pretty satisfying that way. Also, another thing that I like is that I'm playing this with Karen, and unlike too many Nintendo 3D platformers, this is actually 2 players, co-op, fully, like both players get the same experience.
Right.
Neither is stuck playing as a hat. It's really so basically like what you can do, and like you can basically be at 2 different places in the world at any time. I don't think you can be on different planets. Like you both have to be in the same area, in the same level. But you can be anywhere in the level. You don't have to be next to each other. The game is split screen. So you can basically work through the game twice as fast if you both go each your own way, and then like you each solve puzzles on your own in your corner of the world map. Or you can, actually stick together and, help each other in battles. And also there are some puzzles where you will need 2 characters to cooperate. So there's always going to be that too. But, so it's satisfying that way, like where neither a player is getting a compromised experience. So that's really good. But the jankiness, the Lego jankiness is still there. So the platforming, like sometimes like the game is going really well. I'm enjoying like the combat. It's not too, it's just whatever. Like you mash the buttons, but there's combos that you can pull off. It's kind of cute, but ultimately it doesn't really matter too much because again, like the game is very easy. The puzzles are fun to solve. It's fun to explore. All right. The platforming can be infuriating, and that is one thing that I feel like they've had 2 decades now to work on this,
but they haven't.
And they really haven't, and it is infuriating. And it's like they found some solutions along the way where let's say that like most of your characters can stick to ledges, all right? Mm-hmm. And so like you can climb, and what happens when you hang on to a bar, like that's, going, like there are a series of bars, basically a ladder in a way that goes up a wall. And like you stick to the lowest rung of the ladder, and then like you're going to get a prompt, the A button that you just have to press. And then like your character will automatically, almost like magnetically be drawn towards the next rung. So the climbing the wall is almost automated, right? Like, so there's no issue there. But then like sometimes they're like, well, that's not challenging enough, or there's not enough going on. So there's going to be like these timed platforming sections where you have both that and platforms that stick out of the wall and then retract with a certain timing. And so, like you have to time your jumps so that you're before the platform disappears under your feet. And there's no kind of prompt for that. There's no automatically, magnetically being drawn to anything when you're doing that. And so I don't know if I can explain this well enough, but there's a wall, okay? The bars that you're supposed to climb are on that wall. So they're like all right, so the wall is like, the camera is facing the wall, all right? The platforms that are sticking out of the wall, of course, like they're in front, they're between the camera and the wall. And so when you're jumping from one of those platforms to grab on to one of those bars, those ledges, the game is not smart enough to know that that's what you want to do, that you want to grab onto them. And so you end up like kind of like jumping to the right, but also you're kind of trying to press up so that you'll go towards the wall so that you'll grab onto the freaking bar. But then sometimes what happens is that your feet, like maybe you jumped over it and then like your feet actually are landing on top of that bar. And you're like, okay, like hopefully on the way down, if I slide off, my character will be smart enough to automatically grab onto that freaking bar, and then they don't. They never do. And like the platforming is fundamentally broken that way, where it's like cashing checks that it's writing checks that it can't cash. Like they don't deserve to make these platforming sections, like the game engine is not capable of handling them. Anyway, so they're infuriating. Like I really felt, and like the whole thing is timed. And again, like it's like most of the game is super easy. You could play it with like a 5-6-year-old, I'm sure, no problem. And then you've got these like time platforming sections that make, veterans of time platforming sections just, break down. Like it's I don't think I've sworn as much lately at the game as I have at Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga, and I've been playing Mario Kart. So,
fair.
Yeah. Anyway, but all this said, most of the time it's really enjoyable. The presentation is really top notch, and I'm always on the verge, or I'm always being pulled back. But like I'm a lapsed Star Wars fan who now like I'm playing this, and I'm like, you know what? I could rewatch the movies. Sure, like when I hear the R2-D2 sounds in this game, and I can tell where from the movies they come from, I realize I've watched them way too often, and I'm good never watching them again. But like they really put me back into the mindset of like, oh yeah, Star Wars. Those movies are pretty cool. And they they've got tons of jokes, like tons of they will use lines from the movies, but then like they'll change the context around them, or they'll have like a character say it in a different way, or like in a different place, and it kind of changes what the line does. It's I don't know, like it's more clever than I would have thought. But basically, like you can unlock all sorts of stuff. Like I've got a Porg companion that Karen really wanted to unlock, so now we've got like this Lego Porg just following us around. It doesn't really do anything, but it's there. Really neat touches. Like I don't know, like if you want like winks and nudges and stuff like that, you're going to get plenty of them here. We were playing through Return of the Jedi, and I was playing as a C-3PO, and we were in the Ewok village. And when you play as C-3PO in the Ewok village, they'll just like start prostrating themselves in front of you.
There we go. I mean, that's a nice touch, at least.
It is. It really is.
Do you have the noise as well?
Well, they do have all the music, and so like the at some point, like the new version of the Return of the Jedi, Jabba the Hutt, party scene.
Oh yeah,
plays.
Jedi rocks.
But, yeah.
It's cool.
So anyway, so it's all there. It's really cool, and the actors are really good, and it's not cartoony. Like I would almost think that they're the original actors. Like I would almost think that they're like the lines directly from the movie, but obviously, it's like actors doing their best Alec Guinness impressions.
I suspect there's people who have practiced doing Alec Guinness a lot for this kind of moment.
Oh, God, he was so popular with impressionists over here. It's like Alec Guinness was just like a voice. Yeah, I guess maybe it's like the British equivalent of Christopher Walken. It's just like everybody's got an Alec Guinness.
Yeah, but like he's really good. And one thing that I did not expect, though, and I kind of wonder, like these people who are so good at doing Alec Guinness impressions, like did they? It kind of brought me to ask myself like weird questions that I never thought I would ask myself, such as and like they're questions that they had to solve when they were working in this game. The actors impersonating Alec Guinness is, what does Alec Guinness sound like? What would he sound like if he were voicing a video game and had to do all the grunts of effort or the grunts of pain.
Hey, can I get the AI voice generator just to do
that's
Alec
the thing.
Guinness?
I mean, you get the feeling in future that's where we're going, isn't it? Like,
I wonder.
With the Obi-Wan series, like we had the AI James Earl Jones rather than the real James Earl Jones, to sound more like his younger self, which I was like mildly horrified where I was like, oh, that is better than Rogue One. It's like, he does sound more like, the 80s, late 70s James Earl Jones than elderly James Earl Jones does in Rogue One, which it makes you mildly nauseous. But the thing is, it works alright for a character whose voice is deliberately robotic. The other stuff, like Luke in The Mandalorian, that's more like... it's a bit too lifeless.
Yeah. Anyway, like, at least Nando Calrissian will always be voiced by Bill D. Williams wherever, because he's got apparently nothing else to do. So
he's his own affordable.
Voice. Yeah, it's unfortunate. But anyway, like, if you want to know the way that they go with Alec Guinness grunting with effort is just like an old man grunt, and it's very out of place, and it's not what I expected. It's just like, ugh, ugh. It's like,
I need seriously? You to never do that again.
I know, right? I kind of wonder, like, did the actor just go, like, surely Alec Guinness has grunted in the movie before, and then, like, sat through, like, Lawrence of Arabia and The Bridge Over the River Kwai, like, come on.
Like, so maybe like one of those Ealing Studios films where he played like 12 parts or whatever. Like, surely one of them.
Surely, yeah. But maybe he was not old enough yet.
But that's the beauty of those movies where it's like, well, he played every part, so like one of them was old, right? One of the family that he's playing every member of was an old man. Even if he wasn't an old man yet, but.
But yeah, so having a good time, and so we finished the original trilogy, and I kind of don't want to move on from that because they're the movies that I like, and that's the thing, about being a lapsed Star Wars fan. Like, I just don't like the other movies all that much. So we'll see if the Lego magic can get me to appreciate them on some new level. Like maybe I'll still chuckle a lot at the jokes about Boss Nass or whatever. Like, I don't know. But yeah, we'll see. We've been enjoying it a lot. And as an aside, like, someone was on the Discord was asking for recommendations for games to kind of let the stress out. And
not let the hate flow. That's what I was thinking.
But Lego games, you can destroy everything. So it's kind of unexpectedly cathartic.
Do you think that bit at the start of Last Jedi where Snoke is bemoaning the fact that he can't understand what Kylo Ren is saying behind the mask, and then it's like actually way more distorted than it was in the first film? That could have just been a Lego bit.
It could have been.
Like, it's just like, they already did it. There's nowhere for them to go, I don't think, after that.
Well, to be quite honest, the one of the things that most recently killed Star Wars for me was when the finale of the first season of The Mandalorian, where they kind of acknowledge that it's completely stupid that the stormtroopers can't hit like a creature that's 2 meters away from them. I know, like, it's an ongoing joke in Star Wars that the stormtroopers can't shoot. But to have it kind of be made explicit and like a joke in the world of Star Wars kind of made me not enjoy it anymore. I was like, okay, like, this is too dumb.
They took the fun out of the joke.
Yeah, kind of. Oh, and like they kind of cheapened the whole world at the same time.
There is that time where stuff can get too self-referential, which Star Wars passed. I'm gonna say, probably in the second sequel movie. I would guess we were starting to get there. I mean, the first sequel movie. Yeah. The first sequel movie, maybe. I don't know. It depends on what you want. Like, the first sequel movie is just bad recitation. the second one's like, well, did you ever read the books? It's like, okay, come on. They've slept these books around for 2,000 years. I don't fucking believe they'd set them on fire as a gag. Calm down. That's a stupid scene written by dumb. So yeah. But you're right. The idea that they're like, I mean, I guess you could make that joke in a way where it's, if it was characters talking to each other, you get away with it. But I don't know.
Yeah, and the scene was funny. Like I could tell, like, oh yeah, like they kind of had to do it,
right?
Once they thought of doing it. At the same time, like, boy, Star Wars is dumb.
Yeah, it is.
That was like the effect that it had on me. I was like, why am I watching this?
I mean, if it makes you feel any better, like, the stuff they pulled out of the canon is dumber.
Yeah.
Like, there used to be a bunch of, like, horse dragons that went through space and could grant wishes. I mean, look, like, there used to be way dumber shit, so don't worry.
On the other hand, it's got Carl Weathers in it.
I know, that was part of the problem, though.
I see Carl Weathers and I just see Carl Weathers.
Like, yeah, I know. Well, I see Arrested Development Carl Weathers.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, because he played himself in Arrested Development, and it just became, like, the whole gimmick was he would do anything for a buck, and now it's like anytime I see him, I'm like, he did this for a buck.
More Carl Weathers is never bad, as far as I'm concerned.
I didn't say it was bad. It's just I see Carl Weathers, and I see Carl Weathers.
I just, yeah. Anyway, I'm not a big. I'm gonna go in my Mandalorian rant. I think that the whole thing is just like so underwritten and so in love with its idea of like we're gonna do westerns in space,
right?
That it kind of forgot to be good. Like it's very polished. It looks great for a sci-fi TV show. Like we're, like clearly we didn't shoot in the forests of Vancouver, but like it was just like they kind of forgot to write good stuff. Like the whole the finale.
All right.
The finale of the first season is like, hey, there's this guy, like he's so bad, and like, oh, they're kind of putting together this gun, and like people don't survive from that gun. This gun is terrible, like, and like the people who survived it, like they're scarred for life, and like let's get the hell out of here. Except that we're not really doing anything for like 20 minutes, and then eventually we do find a way to get out of there. And also the gun had like this very this 2-meter wide exhaust pipe, basically, that was like a weak point, like or the equivalent of that, like it was its own Death Star.
Oh yeah,
it's
it's a bit in Last Jedi where it's like, oh, they've got a laser to break down the door. It's Death Star. So it's always got to be some connection.
Oh yeah,
like it's the absolute fulcrum of technological reality.
People are very obsessed with spheres with exhaust ports.
And
it is
big gun, big lasers. I think it's fun. Like that's the fun show. If we want the good show, it's Andor's the actually good one. Like,
I've heard of that. I need to. But
obviously it depends what you cook, because if you. What you take from, so it's so popular, it's so broad, people take all sorts of different things from it. But if you like because I was worried about Mandalorian being too much about, it's gonna be badass, it's gonna be so badass, it's just like, and there is a lot of that, but it is also a lot of just like the weird, dorky, cute, like Star Wars in it as well, which is where my affections lie. But then Andor is not that at all. Like it's more like, oh yeah, what would it be like living under fascism? So you have to go into it with that. But
we really have to use the world of Star Wars to imagine
that is the future of escapism. It's like, well, yeah, but it's in another galaxy, so it's totally different.
It's historical, please. It happened a long time ago.
Your point is, it's much more about we've actually got to try and have drama that holds up and your characterization that holds up. It isn't just going to be, kind of the cool set pieces and, references and fan service. And so, you're not going to get Boba Fett riding a rank or in Andor. It's a lot more straight, but they're surprisingly good, I thought. It's just like, they really kind of committed to it and pulled it off pretty well to that point. Anyway, obviously, I believe there's will be more to come.
Nice.
So we've had Star Wars content that's samurai movies, specifically Seven Samurai. We've had Star Wars content.
Hidden Fortress is like the big tribute, the big inspiration for the first movie.
You're right. We've had,
but I mean, like, one episode of Mandalorian is Seven Samurai.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Roger Corman already did it with Battle Beyond the Stars. So, I mean, did we need it?
It's true. We
have George Peppard as Cowboy. I mean, you don't need Han Solo once you've seen that.
It's true. We've had heist movies. We've had westerns. We've had the World War II raid movie. What genres remain on? Do we have the buddy cop film?
Buddy cop's got to happen. So it probably has, like, on a more of a one-off episode or something.
That was probably going to be Solo too, but I don't know.
I could absolutely see them doing a limited Disney Plus run of just like a semi-comedy buddy cop on Coruscant, just dumb shit like that. But I'm not sure how much of a buddy cop you could be in the Imperial era. So generally speaking, Hugo Boss in space style uniforms don't give you the full extent of the buddy cop experience. You're not going to Turner and Hooch in that outfit.
Star Wars Miami Vice is what I'm looking for.
There we go.
Turner and Hooch. Hooch was a dog.
Yes.
Okay.
But it was.
Are you thinking of Tango and Cash?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
That is absolutely it's not a buddy cop film, but it's absolutely structured like a buddy film, even though one of the characters is a dog.
Yeah, I get. Any Which Way But Loose, is that responsible for that particular, the buddy movie where one of the buddies is non-human? It's a Clint Eastwood and orangutan movie.
Well, there's the what's the one with the monkey?
Isn't it Any Which Way But Loose?
No, but there's one where they're truck driver. I'm just blanking on who it stars with. Oh, damn it. Burt Reynolds. There's a Burt Reynolds one with the monkey, and I'm blanking on what that movie's called.
This really was a subgenre.
Yeah, no, there was a thing. And of course, apes are a lot easier to train than dogs. Now I have to look it up. And I was gonna wrap the show, but now I need to know the name of this fucking movie.
Burt Reynolds, Monkey, Smokey and the Bandit Part 3.
No.
Bing, you're useless.
Maybe it wasn't. Let's see. Maybe it wasn't Reynolds. I'm pretty sure it was. No, I guess it wasn't Reynolds.
Skullduggery?
Skullduggery. No, it's not a Reynolds movie. It was whatever. I'll figure it out later. Yeah, buddy cop animal buddy film. There we go. We got it. That's your next Star Wars content. We can be Disney Plus content creators. Give us a bunch of money. Like $1 million billion. There we go. That's the word I need. We're good. I was like, yeah, just give me $1 million. And it's like, no, that's not going to cover it. I need more money. I need to have guests. Who's going to be our guest star? I think that's the most important part. Who are you going to have guest star in your series?
Apparently, you were too snooty to have Carl Weathers in it again, but I'll be there.
Look, all right. What if it's just canonically Carl Weathers? It's just Carl Weathers in Star Wars. There, we've solved the problem. Now we can cast him as Carl Weathers in Star Wars. I think I've solved it. I think we're good. Don't think there's any issues here.
Sure.
Great. Perfect. We did it. All right. Well, I think it's time for us to wrap the show up because we spent the last 10 minutes trying to figure out what the name of a movie was that I'm not even sure existed, but that's cool.
Yeah, Guillaume's sort of fabricated Tetris experience.
There we go.
It's given way to some apocryphal Burt movie.
There we go. There's definitely a movie where he has an animal sidekick. I just can't remember what it is.
Well, definitely Sinbad played in a movie called Shazam, right? We can all agree?
No. I don't think so. Maybe. I don't remember. That sounds extremely like 1991, and I was still very young then.
It's a reference to this thing where like lots of people believe that Sinbad was in a movie called Shazam, and there's no such movie.
Where did
it's like the thing in being John Malkovich where people keep saying, "Oh yeah, in that Jewel Thief movie," and he's like, "I've never been in the Jewel Thief movie. Why do people keep saying that?"
That's the stunt casting we need. John Malkovich is the protagonist of our buddy cop film. Done. We did it. John Malkovich in the Star Wars movie, basically playing his character from being John Malkovich, but also it's a buddy cop movie. Done. Give me whatever the budget is, Disney. You can't do worse than this. Probably. This is probably the worst idea that's ever been pitched. I'll take it. Nah, that's not true. There's definitely been worse Star Wars content pitched. I'm confident of that. Oh shit, we're gonna get a racing show, aren't we? Because both F1 and NASCAR have had major success with documentary style racing television programs.
What's already pitched it and called it now this is pod racing. Yep. All right, let's skip to the end.
Yeah, no, it's coming. God damn it. All right, well on that, Greg, music.
Yeah, well, first of all, I do want to say again, the Star Fox documentary for the anniversary, well worth watching that. You get a glimpse at the demo that Dylan Cuthbert himself, as a teenager, made, to show off to Nintendo to help sort of convince them of Argonaut's ability to do these wondrous 3D things on Nintendo hardware at the time, and I think there's going to be more of that coming in collaboration with the Video Game History Foundation down the line. But yeah, just really enjoyable documentary to watch in general. But also, yes, the closing music. Now, we do have another request in from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. We did this, I think it was episode 799, I want to say. We had one in, but with it being Pokemon Day so shortly after this episode goes out, I was as good a time as any to tackle another one. This is from AG. And it is, again, from Scarlet and Violet. This is Academy Ace Tournament battle theme, which is very much in the a long and proud tradition of Pokemon battle themes, but just kind of everything dialed up, like the instruments, the energy. This is very, very, it goes very hard. I think it's fair to say.
All right. Well, on that, it is time for us to wrap up the show. Next week, I think John will be back, and we'll probably try to do a regular-ish.
We also have to get to work on Wind Waker.
That's right. Thank you. Yes, if you do not own Wind Waker, time is very quickly running out for you to rectify that situation digitally. We are going to do a retroactive on Wind Waker. We're going to do it next month, so go and acquire it. Like I said, time is extremely running out unless you want to try to buy a physical copy.
We'll get the GameCube version going, I guess.
Yeah.
I could do that.
Get yourself a GBA with the link cable.
The Tingle Tuner.
Yeah.
But on that, it is time for us to go. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.